Hello there, and welcome to the Gina Gardiner Show. My guest today, Mary Buffett, is someone that I've spoken to a number of times, and I never cease to be impressed and humbled by the way in which she makes investments simple. Welcome to the show, Mary. Thank you very much for joining me, and I know there's going to be a wealth of information for people. But
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. But before we get started, would you like to share with our listeners your story? How have you come to be doing this work on investments?
Sure. I was just like anyone or most, I don't know if most people, but I started working when I was very young. Actually 14, 15. I was in the music business, so I could be that young and start working. And really all of my life, I worked, I saved, I earned money, but I never really saved it. I never had money that I invested so that over the long term, it would work for me. And then when I married Peter Buffett, who is Warren Buffett's son, and obviously Warren is one of the greatest investors of all time, I had the fortunate experience of being around Warren in everyday life, and all he talks about is business and investing and all the people around him. So I was incredibly lucky that on our especially during the holidays when we'd all be down in Laguna Beach staying in the same house, we'd have amazing guests that I really didn't realize were so amazing until afterwards. You don't think that these people are so incredible, but I was so lucky to be around that. And I think that watching and listening to Warren, it gave me the idea that I should start investing, buying into companies that I understood. That's the main thing. So a lot of investors invest in things that they don't really understand because their stockbroker told them or a friend tells them. But I say, you really need to invest in things that you understand. And that's a great way to start looking about what to invest in is, particular things that you like. If, for instance, if you're like me, you love to cook, you can look at different things that involve cooking that you might be able to invest in, or banking. So you have to be comfortable with the company that you're investing in. And I think the other thing that I always suggest is do a lot of work. I mean, it's your money and you work so hard for it. And a lot of people don't take that as much time looking at what they're investing in. So I think you have to understand it. And once you understand what you're interested in investing in, look into it and really research the different companies, who's running them, what their plans are. And you can call the company and ask them for, their chairman's letter and see what they're doing. There's a lot more information now, especially with the internet, that you can get than you ever could before.
I think that's very wise. It makes me really think about how people will give their money to other people to invest for them and be very trusting. And then when things go wrong, it's all right when things go well, but when things go wrong, then, they wonder why that they have been put in that situation. But ultimately, if you take responsibility for it yourself, then you can make decisions that are based on your understanding of fact rather than somebody else who very often wants to get their commission rather than sell you what is right for you.
That's so right. That's very correct. And I really think that you have to look at your everyday life and what you enjoy doing and things that you're interested in. Those are the kinds of things that you might be right in front of you that you don't realize you could be investing in.
I'd like to take it a step back, if I may, because there'll be lots of people listening to this who think to me, well, why do I need to invest? Why is it important that I invest? So what for you is at the heart of making investments so important and such a positive thing to do?
Well, as maybe people don't realize, but being around Warren Buffett, the greatest investor of all time, I had a unique opportunity to see him take any reasonable amount of money, even small amounts of money, and watch them grow enormous amounts, compounding. That's his favorite thing, is looking at compounding. So, when something is compounding, it's making you money without you doing anything except investing in a company that is continually growing. And so also, I think it's really important that people understand what they're investing in. So don't invest in a company. If you're not in, for instance, I don't know, insurance, don't invest in insurance, understand the company and what they do so that you're comfortable with it. So even, you might be a foodie like me. And so you would think, well, what could I invest in that has to do with food? But once you start thinking about that, you'll find there are a lot of different companies that you can invest in. My girlfriends, my daughters actually, when they were very young, they said they learned this from their grandpa. They came back from Omaha and they were sitting on the couch. And I said, what are you guys doing? And they said, we're thinking about what we're going to put our money in. And I said, oh, really? What are you going to put your money in? Because they only got their allowance. And they said, Pillsbury. And I said, Pillsbury? They said, yes, because we found out that it owns Burger King and something else, and we love those things. And so we want to put our money in that. And I thought, that's so interesting. And sure enough, I invested their small amount of money in Pillsbury's years and years ago, and they made a fortune over the long term.
As people are struggling with inflation, and many people don't understand compound interest, and so they've got into debt and are now paying the price of compound interest because they're not paying back any of the main money they borrowed, just paying the interest back. Yeah. I'm struck by my father, who was a great investor. He invested in unit trusts. And it was something that he hadn't done until he retired. And then he realized that his pension wasn't going to maintain its value unless he did something with it. And he wanted to have the security of knowing that his money was going to provide for him in his old age. And in order to do that and to be secure about it, he needed to do something more than just put it in the bank. And these days, if you put it in the bank, you get nothing in terms of interest, do you?
No.
And he decided that he was going to find out. He was a very curious man, and he started to read the papers, and there would be free courses and so on available. And he became an expert in those things that he invested in, and he did very well. But it struck me that he was a man that until he started to invest, he had no interest in it. He had never done it. And yet at the age of 65, he decided that it was time for him to really take note. And from what you're saying, this is something that is available to pretty well anybody, so long as they make that decision that they want to invest something and they want to see that invested in something that's likely to grow.
Yes, I'm glad you brought up that story, because you're really never too old to invest. And, when you think about it, even just $5, and you think about, if I have $5 today and I put it in the bank account, it's going to do nothing. It's actually going to cost you money, over time, for just having the bank account. But if you're investing it in something that's giving you minimum 10%, think about that, 10% over the years really starts to add up. And, this is the thing that Warren always looks at. He's basically getting over 15% return on his investments.
That's
amazing. And he holds them forever. He rarely sells anything. So, you really have to decide what you want to invest in, and then you have to make it as a lifetime investment, because that's what you want, is the time is on your side when it comes to investing, not like anything else.
Well, Mary, I know that you've worked with many, many people, helping them to become successful investors. So for our listeners, what strategies, you've said get to know the company, but that in and of itself isn't enough. What sort of things do they need to do once they've decided perhaps on the companies that they want to invest in? What are your strategies for the beginner?
Well, first of all, I mean, for the beginner, again, I say, understand what you're investing in. So, like I said, if you love to cook, if you're a food person, you can look at companies that are food companies, something that you're familiar with.
Where would they find that? Because I think for people who are not used to it, it could feel overwhelming. And the internet, one of the problems is that there's too much information. So if, let's say, food is your thing, how might you find the right sort of companies?
Honestly, it's great that we mentioned food, because if you go and look in your kitchen,
Yeah.
or think about what you're using every day, that you don't really think about as an investment, but you're using it all the time, whether that's a flour or a sugar, and then you think, who owns that company? Who owns Jello? Who
Yes.
owns these different companies? And then you can, with the internet now, I mean, as much as it's overwhelming, it just gives you so much more information than you ever could have gotten before. You can get balance sheets from companies. You can get look at who's running the company. This is really important. It's one of the things that Warren really looks at when he invests in companies, is who's running them? Who are these people? What is their mindset? What is their philosophy about the company that they are running and that you are going to hopefully invest in? So you need to kind of look at a company or any investment that you're making just the same as if you're looking at a relationship. You get to know it, you look at it, you understand it, you find out who's making the decisions about where the company is going to be going. Look at the past history. Do they have earnings? How are those earnings been? Have they been predictable and consistent? Have they been going up over a period of time? Not radically, but consistently earning a little bit more money than before. So that if you're investing over a long period of time, you're going to make money no matter what, because this company has done it in the past. And the past is very important to look at, as well as who the people are that are running it. And a lot of people invest in companies and they don't know any of that. They'll hear it from their stockbroker, they'll hear it from a friend, and they'll just go out and invest in it. And I say, take the time. It's your money. You've worked very hard for it. Spend as much time learning about investing, because that time that you take to learn about a company is critical, because you can either stay in the company, continually add every month or whenever you have extra money. And, you don't have to invest a lot of money. I really want people to know that. You can invest a small amount of money, and you can do it monthly. You could do it 6 months, every year, whatever works out for your budget. But I think it's really important to look at the long term and make a plan so that you have some money. We all, the amount of money that we throw away is just incredible. When you really think about it, if you take $20 and you realize that in 3 days, everyone listening is going to at least spend $20 on something that, they probably aren't investing it. They're just spending it on stuff, And so you have to be more careful with your spending, because that money can really take care of you for the rest of your life, invested wisely.
That's a really important point that you make. I wonder how many people listening, if you look in your wardrobe, How many outfits have you got in your wardrobe that you've never worn or you've only worn once? How many handbags do you need? You know, if you're a man, do you go for all of the, I'm being very sexist about that. It might be the other way around, and you're, as a man, buying shirts and suits, and women, you're buying the electrical gizmos. But either way, are you spending money? And I was on a courses very early on. It talked about good investment and poor investment, in the sense of investing in yourself, in helping yourself be a better version of you, is a good investment, particularly if that has an impact on your earning power. Buying a house, buying something that's going to accrue value, is a good investment. But buying stuff is a poor investment, because the minute you buy it, it loses value. And so often we fill our cupboards and our wardrobes with things that we don't use and are just dead money lying there.
Right. It's so true. So I always ask, or even my children, I tell them, any money that you get, take a percentage of it and always put it aside, no matter what. Just take, even if it's 5%, even if it's 1%, just take it and set it aside to invest, and invest in something that you understand, something that you know, that you're comfortable with, and that you've done some research on. That's the main thing. Is with the internet now, like I said, it used to be so difficult to find out information. You have to call the company, get the presidents, everything, all these different statements. But now you can just look on the internet, and there's so much information.
Yes.
That you really have to work at it, so that you're not just investing in a ton of things, but in specific things that are important to you, that you understand, that you enjoy, that maybe you use in your life, like I'm saying.
Mary, I was interested that, when you were talking about your children, how they started very early having the mindset of investing. And they were very lucky to have you and their granddad, who was exposing them to investment as being a natural part of their daily life. But one of the things that struck me, and I think I was a principal of a large school for 20 years, one of the things that struck me is how most children have very little understanding of the value of money. And as a result, of when they go to university or college, or they leave home, that they struggle then to budget, and investments seem to be the last thing on their mind. I'll invest when I'm older rather than doing it when they're young. What strategies have you used with your daughters, who talked about investing their little bit of money? What things can you say to parents that might help them give their children a much better sense of the value of money and the positive reasons for investing?
Well, it's a great question. And I think the best answer I have is, include your children in what you are learning. So explain to them that, they have some money, and what that money can actually do for them. So you can show them that, let's say they get $5 a week. If you can show them that that $5 can actually, without them getting any more money from you or anyone, can actually be worth $10, let's say, in a number of months, years, whatever, if they buy something, what they do with that $5. So if you can teach them that money isn't something that you just get and spend, it's not for spending, that money is for saving and for helping you in your life, is an overall goal. So it's just not something that you get and they spend. So you try to teach them to save it and then to invest it. And that's, investing in some stuff that they understand, once again, is really key, because there's so many things out there that children understand, so many companies that children can gather, oh, M&Ms, who owns M&Ms?
Yeah.
Jello, who owns Jello? Look at that company. So start to take things that are around them every day that they use and they understand, and then have them look at the company and do it with them. And I think if you do that together with them, it really becomes interesting. And then once they start to see that their money can suddenly be making more money without them doing anything, they're hooked, then they understand what investing really means, rather than just getting their allowance, waiting, saving the money and going and buying something. Because once they buy it, money's gone.
I'm smiling because when I was a principal, one of the things that we ran for parents was we ran courses for parents in order to help them help their children. And some of that was around the curriculum. But we ran on a regular basis one to help parents engage with their children in a very different way around money, because children would nag and whine about things that they wanted. And I was smiling because it reminded me of one particular family where the mother came to see me and said, I'm at the end of my tether. All of my children have got this thing about designer clothes and designer shampoos, and the little one's into Pokemon, and I simply can't afford it. And I said to her, well, what I suggest you do is you give them a budget appropriate to their age, and that within that budget, very clear definition of what they have to spend it on. And 10% of that was to save, 10% of it was for charity, and the other 80% was to pay for all of the things that the parents didn't pay for. So with the oldest ones, they bought all of their clothes and their toiletries and so on. Their school uniform was bought, but their budget had to do all of their entertainment and everything else like that. And the middle child, who was very much into expensive shampoos, was given his budget. And the first week she took him shopping, he put a very different shampoo and gel and stuff into the basket. And she said, why are you doing that? And his comment was, well, I'm not spending my money on that. I'm saving because I want to do whatever. But I think that what you're suggesting takes the principles of what we talked about to a whole new level. And if you can engage your children in handling money and understanding money and recognizing what a positive thing investment can be, then
Right.
you won't have so many people who are struggling financially and who are in debt and who don't know where they're going to turn because they can't afford to pay their bills.
Well, you just said the biggest word, debt. And that is something that unfortunately, probably every one of our listeners, I mean, I have extremely low debt. I'm trying to think of what, maybe every month before I pay my credit card bill off 100%, I have a little bit of debt because I just can't stand for that amount of money on my credit card bill to be, charged 18, 20%, on my money. It's incredibly crazy. And everyone has to realize that debt is a terrible thing to have. And most people have an enormous amount of debt, especially with credit cards. And they're really, that's what I say, get those credit cards, pay them off. Don't start learning to use cash. I love cash because it's really difficult when you've got $100, five $20 bills, and you have to start breaking those 20s and suddenly your money is going. That's what I like cash for. It really shows you rather than a credit card. And it's just too easy with those credit cards to run up an enormous amount of debt, way over what you actually can afford. And so try to stick with the cash method, because you'll wind up paying much less for things. You wind up not buying an enormous amount of things that you ordinarily would just buy and put on a credit card.
I think that's really, really good advice. I can remember losing my credit card about 5 days before Christmas, and I too always pay it off. I don't like the idea of me paying interest to the credit card company. And the number of times I went to the hole in the wall to to take out money, there was a realization of how much I was spending. It was very different to going into a shop and just handing my credit card. And now you can do it without even putting your PIN number in, certainly in the UK, up to £100. It's even easier to spend money without realizing. You know, I've just looked at the clock and we are pretty well at the end of our time together. Where can people find you if they want to? I know you've written a number of books which are available on Amazon. We haven't had a chance to talk about those.
It really, if you go to marybuffett.com, you can always leave a message there and see if there's anything that I'm putting out recently, you know, whether it's a statement or something, but that's about it. And of course, on your show.
Oh, thank you. And as I say, you've got lots of books on Amazon. Mary, as always, it's been a joy to have to speak to you and to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to say thank you very much for listening. Do please tune in to the next show. And I'd love to hear from you. My email address is Gina, Gina, at genuinely-u.com. Please let us know what you think of the show and let us know if there are any themes or particular guests you'd like us to have. Thanks again for joining us. And once again, Mary, thank you.
Thank you, Gina.